Okay, this question is addressed to Dr. P. Andersen, and it asks him to take out his crystal ball and predict something about the future of the Internet.
Well, as the Internet spreads, and it will spread as most innovations do, it will be used as a major form of interpersonal communication. Already, almost half the people in the United States communicate on a daily basis via email. As far as commerce goes, we've already talked about both B2B and B2C commerce, and that will continue despite the fact that there are failures. Finally, in terms of education, universities throughout the world, certainly in the United States and Latin America, are now going online, either with an occasional course or in some cases with much of the curriculum of the university. And this has a benefit to people that can't get to major educational and urban centers for their education. So I think we are just seeing the tip of the proverbial iceberg.
Lois, does your crystal ball show us anything different?
Well, it's a little cloudy, but one of the things we often see with any innovation is, in its original form, it's often very dramatic. And as increasingly more people use it, it becomes more practical. Some of the problems and kinks and difficulties go away, and it tends to become more user-friendly. So I think it will become something that in 20 years, many of us will think, did we have lived without it?
Something that we come to expect rather than live in awe of.
Correct.
Interesting. Our next question comes to us, again, from Mexico, from Chihuahua, Mexico, from the Universidad Autónoma de Chihuahua.
Buenos días. Nuestra pregunta es, ¿cuál es la tendencia del
Our question is, what is the trend as far as the use of e-commerce in Latin America? What can you tell us about that?
Okay, this question is asking us about the trend for e-commerce. Do either of you want to start on this? Peter?
Well,
they're
obviously,
both looking a little puzzled.
well, I don't have any real hard data on the rate of increase, although I do know this, that in lesser developed countries, the rate of increase is faster than in developed countries because relatively fewer individuals are on the Internet and doing e-commerce, so it is expanding rapidly. Likewise, many times foreign business or partnerships between foreign businesses such as Japan or Korea and Latin American countries such as Mexico and Venezuela give them an opportunity to partner with countries that are more experienced in Internet use and are therefore able to diffuse it to these other countries.
Okay. Our next question stays in Mexico, comes to us from Morelia, Mexico, from the Instituto Politécnico Nacional Unidad Morelia. I hope I pronounced that okay. Thank you.
Sí, buenos días. Les hablamos aquí
We're from the Continuous Education Center, and we have the following question for you. This was regarding the module, the other module. The design of a web page, in what percentage does it affect the permanence and of the permanence in the maybe keeping the clients and the client as a consumer? In what way does the web page help us keep our client and keep him consuming?
Okay. This is a question directed to Lois, and the question is about how the web page functions to keep the relationship between the consumer and the business.
Well, one of the things we've seen is many companies in the United States, Western Europe, jumping to get on the Internet, get a website, they put it up, and it sits there. They don't change it, and people who are accessing it look at it many times, and nothing's happening. This is a place where I think a lot of us have not really kept pace as marketing people, because the technicians do one side of it, and the marketing people do another side, and you really need to come together. And much like Peter said in his module, hire young people to do this. Don't hire old people like us. They understand how to merge this. With your website, you need to make it interactive, you need to make it dynamic, and you need to change it. It's just like a display in a store. If you had the same merchandise display for a whole year, who would ever come back? The other thing I've noticed is, think about who your customer is. Is your customer 10 years old, 30 years old, or 50 years old? We would run a different advertisement based on the consumer's age. Think about that with your website.
Okay. Our next question comes to us again from Mexico, from Tecamachalco, Mexico, from the Universidad Tecnológica.
Sí, gracias. Buenos días a todos.
Buddy, our question is, what do manufacturing companies need to have their products on the internet and be more successful? What do they need to do as far as marketing their products?
Okay, this is another question about marketing. What do companies need to do a good job of marketing on the internet? Peter.
One of the things they need to do is simply have a presence on the internet. If you're manufacturing steel components, and you know that a number of businesses might be ordering this, simply getting up a business-to-business website on the internet with keywords so that when people search for this, they will easily find your site is a key. If your prices are competitive and you're able to have a presence on the internet, other businesses will find a manufacturing company and often begin to order their products.
Another thing we found with several companies that we have worked with is we as the manufacturer, we as the retailer, tend to think of our product in one way. To find those key words, ask someone else. If you're selling eyeglasses or you're selling, I don't know, pens, you think of it in your own vocabulary. Ask someone else how they would search for it. What words would they type in and look up? And then create a lot of links and a lot of keywords for your search. And you can be very creative about your search in these ways. Also, the more people who hit your site, the higher up on the priority list your company comes. So it becomes sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So maybe you want to call your relatives and tell them to hit your site a lot.
Yeah, links are a key, as Lois is saying here, because if you can build strategic alliances with other companies so they can put a button directly linking your website to theirs, you're going to increase your number of hits and enhance your probability of increasing your sales.
And increase your credibility.
Absolutely.
Great strategies, great strategies. Our next question comes to us from Argentina, Buenos Aires, Argentina. And once again, we have a question from the Grupo Previsional Nación.
Sí, esta pregunta es para ambos expositores.
This is for both experts. Given your experience and knowledge, what do you think is the greatest obstacle to overcome, or greatest challenge to overcome in the market in order to impose e-commerce? Is it regulations or use and habits? What is your experience or what is your insight about this?
Okay, we're asking our guests here to provide us with their insights about the greatest obstacles. Are they regulations? Are they marketing obstacles? What do you think is the greatest obstacle to e-commerce?
Well, fortunately, it's not regulation. The internet is still wide open and virtually unregulated, for better or worse. Of course, some people complain that it's not regulated more, but it is an open space and an open marketplace for everyone to participate in. So that isn't a major obstacle. The major obstacles are economic development, and as we talked about earlier, the ability of consumers to be comfortable with this. There is no great psychological obstacle for teenagers, but for many middle-aged persons, it is like learning to ride a bike if you've never rode a bike before, and that's very, very difficult for an older person that's set in their ways. It might be fearful about this technology or simply don't understand it.
Lois, what do you think?
I would agree with that. That comes from the consumer end, and it comes within the management structure. Someone within the company says, hey, Dad, we've got to be online, and Dad reluctantly says, okay, do it. But until the company has bought in that you've now entered the 21st century, it's very difficult because there does have to be commitment. It's not going to cost you a huge amount, but it does cost you in time and in money, some of your better talent sometimes. So that, I think, many small firms have as a real obstacle. The company's not really committed to it.
So the biggest obstacle, both of you think, is really simply making the transition into this new era and all the things that are involved in that.
Psychological and to a lesser degree technological, but certainly not regulatory.
Okay.
No, not regulatory.
Not regulatory. Psychological and technological. Okay, our next question comes to us from the Dominican Republic, from Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic, from the Centro de Gestión y Investigación.
Buenas tardes. El uso del Internet
The use of Internet and the networks implies a cultural element. What is the cultural impact of the use of this net on the cultures of the peoples like Latin American, for instance? How can you use Internet to consult in a more direct way all the products, the pharmaceutical products that are distributed here through the Internet?
Okay, we have a question about what is the impact of the Internet itself on the culture of the people that are using that Internet, and how can the Internet services be promoted to foster the agendas within those cultures?
Well, I think in a lot of cultures that are very people-oriented, that think about face-to-face interactions, there may be a bit of a reluctance, but think of it this way and promote it this way. What the Internet does is enable you to do, as I talked about in my module, the part of the task that's kind of boring, that's kind of routine, and it frees you up with more time for the actual human face-to-face contact, whether that's between a consumer and the vendor or it's between a consumer and his wife. It really does make our lives simpler.
There is a concern that the Internet in general and electronic commerce in specific will produce a bland and homogenized world. While that may happen, another force is simultaneously at work. That is, it enables every local culture to put up websites in their language with their products, emphasizing their local art, music, culture, news. And so it can be a culturally enhancing medium as well as a worldwide medium that merges cultures together.
Okay.
You know, I would add to that also, Jan, that we found that in some cases, very small subcultures within a larger culture are finding the Internet is a wonderful way to make their own identity actually more viable. They can find each other.
So the establishment of communities that bridge distance.
What we call virtual communities, in which people might have common interests in politics or art or music or whatever, but are separated by distance. Traditionally, communities were a geographical entity. Now they can become an electronic entity as well.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Our next question comes to us from beautiful La Paz. I can say that because I've been there. I'm sure that many of these other cities are equally beautiful, but I can't speak from direct experience. Anyway, this question is from the Universidad Autónoma de Baja California Sur.
Buenos días. ¿Qué características estructurales?
What are the structural features of the mobile units in mobile business or mobile commerce?
This is a question about mobile commerce, and I think we'll start there with Peter, since you talked about that.
Well, the Internet started out as a linkage between personal computers. But increasingly, people in Japan, the United States, Western Europe, are finding being tied to their desktop inconvenient. And so in the next generation of wireless devices, often called third generation wireless devices, we are finding people increasingly moving to a wireless world. Our own local company, Qualcomm, is a leader in developing wireless technologies. These technologies are going to be able to access the internet from either a smart third-generation high-bandwidth cell phone or a compact wireless personal computer. This will enable, for instance, a salesman that's short on product, that's out on the road, to fill his inventory without having to find a place to plug in his computer. It will enable a consumer that needs something very quickly as they're moving through an airport to order a product and have it waiting for them when they return home. So there is a lot of advantage to the wireless web.
Okay. Moving around Mexico, we have a question once again from Los Mochis, Sinaloa, from the Universidad de Occidente. Sorry.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Buenos días. ¿De qué manera afecta?
In what way do the publicity agencies get affected as far as their job? All these internet sales or the sales over the internet, how do the marketing agencies get affected, or the advertising agencies?
Okay, this is a question about peripheral jobs. How does the internet affect the marketing, sales, and other jobs in an industry?
Well, one of the things we found, some of the companies who've been feeling most quickly some of the effects of the internet are advertising agencies. Bookings on television shows and a lot of other print media have actually decreased because in many ways those advertising agencies it's not that they're not needed, it's that they haven't stepped up and moved into the avenue of internet marketing. You have to remember many advertising publicity companies are older companies, staffed with older people who look like Peter and me. The internet companies and the companies that are doing websites and web marketing tend to be a younger group of people. And they're getting a lot of competition. Doesn't mean they're not needed. Maybe they need to hire some of those younger people and again open their minds to looking at what the probability is and possibility is for marketing on the web as part of a whole integrated marketing system.
Okay. Our next question comes to us from Mexico, Sonora, Mexico, or Hermosillo, Sonora, Mexico, from the Universidad de Sonora.
Muy buenos días, un saludo desde la Universidad de Sonora, México. Un saludo a los expositores.
We want to send our greetings to the presenters. A comment with regard to this warning about the crisis of the dot-com companies and their online services and their e-commerce services. This is a warning that I think also applies to public services or public utilities. I would say that to the speakers that this is a problem that also will impact in a very serious way organizations, government educational institutions, which are very motivated by all this new technology, and we have also made a big and great and extensive use of same, but at the same time, maybe we have made mistakes, and that should also be a warning signal for us to realize that we could also go under unless we really know how to use this and get our act together.
It's really kind of a comment more than a question, but would you like to respond to the comment?
Sure. I don't think, especially when you're talking about government or education, but also about business, that we're finding that the internet is a replacement. In fact, in the history of media, most media don't replace other media, they augment other media. We haven't stopped reading because we go to the movies. And we shouldn't stop doing traditional kinds of government services just because they're available on the internet. So the internet augments, it doesn't supplant.
Okay. And Lois, do you want to sort of add another comment here about the impact of the technology and how it might change the world in which we live? Will it supplant other things, or will we all just get busier?
I think it will probably free us up to have more time to take on more tasks, but it will make our lives better. Remember, in the early stages of anything, there are always complications. I even think of something like microwaves. 25 years ago, they were very large, they didn't work particularly well, and today, most of the Western world could not even imagine living without one. That will probably happen as we move forward to all of us, from a consumer end, a service provider end, a manufacturer end. But there will be lots of growing pains as we go through it.
So we're going to get more time to do more things.
Exactly.
More quickly. Hang on.
In more places.
In more places with more people. Right. As this particular technology demonstrates today. It's been a pleasure to have all of you here with us. Thank you for your excellent questions, but unfortunately we have run out of time. We hope that you have enjoyed participating once again in this exciting multilingual and multinational program. We invite you to participate in our 9th video conference of this year's series, which will air on September 27th, 2001, entitled Human and Emotional Competence, a New Framework for Attitudes and Personal Skills. For additional information on this year's video conference series, please consult your participant's manual, where you will find the dates and specific topics for each program. You may also visit our websites, intektra.com, ittconline.com, and onlinecompetence.com. On behalf of all of us at the International Training Center, I thank you for your enthusiastic participation and interest in today's program. Thanks, and hope to see you again real soon.